A few minutes before the shootout, Ryan was sitting behind Vulcan inside her mech, both partners in crime observing Dynamis HQ through a computer screen. The tower looked like some game's final dungeon, with increasingly dangerous enemies guarding each floor with the boss at the very top. It almost made Ryan wish for a suicide run, but that would be for another time. His suit awaited him. "Should you be drinking while driving?" the courier asked Vulcan, who just finished a bottle of vodka. "I haven't taken enough to feel any effects," she replied, opening a hidden compartment and putting the empty bottle there. Ryan noticed a few other bottles inside, including a Bordeaux wine and a few other delicacies. Vulcan immediately rose up further in the courier's esteem for showing such exquisite taste. "You have a minibar." "I'm a genius," she replied with a smirk. "Maybe I will put one in your power armor when I get around to making it. I'm thinking of something sleek, optimized for close combat. I would prefer a Megazord honestly. Maybe it could have a panda-themed animal mode? From those Japanese-American shows?" She made a disdainful face. "They're campy as hell." "Hey, don't spit on my childhood," Ryan complained, before squinting. "Wait, you watched them too?" "I looked into many sci-fi TV series for inspiration," Vulcan admitted with a look of brief embarrassment, before changing the subject. "Anyway, I finished scanning the area, and we're good." "So we're going in?" Vulcan looked over her shoulder, with Ryan leaning on her back due to the cockpit's lack of space. "That may have come out a bit dirty." "I studied their defenses," Vulcan told him before focusing back on the screen. "Been itching to test my stealth system on Dynamis, but never got the occasion. I still can't believe Livia gave her blessing, especially if she doesn't know how it will end." "She gave her blessing because she doesn't know," Ryan pointed out. The Mafia princess seemed as desperate as he was for new and unexpected entertainment. "Thanks for helping. I wouldn't try that if Alphonse Manito was in town, even for your pretty face," Vulcan admitted. "That ruthless Mafia is everything his brother isn't. Even without him nearby, we have minutes before they send heavy hitters after us, after which we are toast. Grab the suit and don't play around." "Not even a little." "Don't play around, Ryan," Vulcan replied firmly, pointing at the building right next to Dynamis HQ, namely the Illinois Migliore Tower. "Their best can take on our best, and it's their territory. They will move to reinforce the strategic areas like the labs once the alarm is sounded, but confusion will only buy us so much time. Now hold on to me." Ryan sighed but consoled himself with the thought of finally getting a cashmere wool suit. In preparation for this fateful moment, the courier had left most of his clothes behind at Jamie's place, except for his pants, shirt, mask and hat. The only thing he carried with him was the plushie, too dangerous to be left without supervision. Vulcan put it in a compartment inside the mech, sealing its evil away. Vulcan had her mech fly off its current spot and above New Rome, shrouding its metal hide with some kind of camouflage. It might trick Dynamis radars and drone defenses, at least until impact. Vulcan's mech quickly accelerated, the G-force increasing until Ryan had no choice but to hold on to the pilot to avoid being thrown backward. He could see Dynamis building get closer and closer on the computer screen, wing-shaped drones flying around the perimeter. The combination of speed, low altitude, and stealth hid the power armor from their gaze. And then, the mech hit the building like a missile, shattering the 20th floor's windows and most of its ceiling. Vulcan powered through furniture, assembly lines, and wardrobes before finally stopping. "Go, go, go!" Vulcan shouted at Ryan while the cockpit opened, the courier immediately emerging from the mech. Dynamis Wool Factory was a sanitized floor lacking anything resembling warmth or color, with mechanical arms replacing humans as part of the assembly line. Only a few desks oversaw the production lines, and since they each housed a computer, they probably belonged to engineers. Two elevators and stairwells linked the floor to the rest of the building south of the duo's current position. Alarms started resonating across the floor, metal panels closing the windows outside and security cameras immediately focusing on the intruders. Ryan didn't pay it any attention. A Gregorian song in his head drowned all noise outside, his attention entirely focused on something straight out of his wildest dream. The freshly made cashmere wool suits were gathered in a wardrobe near his position, each one a different color. Among them was a purple-dyed one, with pants included. The perfect suit had been waiting for him all along. No man would have been insensible to such a sight, and Ryan was no exception. He carefully touched this luxury cloth with his bare hands, feeling the texture, the warmth, the weight of the €1,000 spent on making this vision of heaven. He took this snazzy suit away from the wardrobe, basking in its glory. Suddenly, Ryan decided that existence wasn't meaningless. All the conflicts in mankind's history had been worth it, for they led to the creation of this suit. Ryan! Vulcan shouted at him from inside her mech, growing tense and impatient. The machine had to lower itself not to hit the ceiling. What the fuck are you waiting for? I'm sorry. Ryan had to suppress tears of joy. This is the meaning of life. Unfortunately, newcomers decided to interrupt his divine revelation. A 6-man squadron in white power armor stepped out of the 2 elevators, escorting Blackthorn. The Dynamis executive finished adjusting his suit as if preparing for a meeting rather than a fight. Mr. Romano, Miss Sharif, Enrique Manada said, always dryly polite. If you wish to make a late-night appointment, we had a receptionist downstairs. His soldiers pointed their weapons, powerful laser rifles, at the 2 Augusti genomes. Vulcan raised her own cannon arm at them, both groups facing each other in a tense standoff. I don't take appointments, the genius declared, trying to sound badass, I force them. Ryan groaned at her lack of wit. She needed some coaching on that front. Your attack is bound to fail, Enrique said with icy confidence. The labs are secure, Don Hector is in another location, and our heroes will be there any minute. I don't understand what you're trying to do here, but this was suicide to even try. Oh, a minute is fine, Ryan replied, walking towards Vulcan's mech. We just finished our shopping and we will be on our way. You won't get. Blackthorn suddenly stopped, his composure disturbed by something for the first time in the conversation. Wait, what do you mean by shopping? I don't understand. Ryan pointed a thumb at his shirt. Good. Ryan stopped time, and when it resumed, he had stripped down to his underwear. He kept only his mask, hat and boxers on, the rest of his clothes on the floor. 6 laser rifles were instantly pointed at him, 5 at his head, and 1 at his crotch, by far his most powerful weapon. Behind me, sir, he's going to flash you. A soldier said, moving in front of a speechless Enrique Manada. Ryan ignored the jab, even as the entire squadron seemed ready to blast him to death at a moment's notice. He slowly put on the suit, pants last, ignoring the pervading tension in the room. No one dared interrupt him, his sheer moxie and the absurdity of the situation commanding everyone's full attention. Better. Once he had put on the suit, Ryan started closing its buttons. Slowly. Methodically. Lovingly. Finally, once he had finished dressing up, Ryan put his hands on his waist. The suit's colors mixed perfectly with his mask and hat, making him look fabulous. The way any genome's costume should. Perfect. For a moment, nobody dared utter a word. Enrique Manada looked at the courier, left speechless by the time manipulator's overwhelming glamour. Illinois Migliori's manager glanced at the suit, then at Vulcan, and finally at his men. They rolled their shoulders in confusion, so he looked back at Quicksave. You broke into our HQ? Threatened to start a war. For a suit. Enrique seemed unable to make a full sentence, interrupting himself whenever he said more than 5 words. He kept raising and lowering his hand as if trying to point out something, but unable to finish his action. Not for the elixirs. Or Don Hector. But for a suit. The brand manager turned as stiff and lifeless as a Dynamis ad. Sir? One of the armored soldiers turned to Enrique, keeping his rifle pointed at Quicksave's crotch. Sir, what do we do? Sir? You can't possibly. This is to be a diversion. Can't possibly be that stupid. I think you made his brain bug the hell out. Quicksave, Vulcan mused out loud, her cannon arm still pointed at Dynamis' squadron. Enrique shook his head, still unable to regain his composure. "I'm trying to process the sheer stupidity involved." "Oh," Ryan said, "and here I thought you were the smart one." The taunt snapped Blackthorn into action. The rose and his business suit grew to the size of a small cannon and fired a volley of sharp thorns at Quicksave, who dodged with a combination of time stop and hiding behind the closest desk. Vulcan immediately opened fire back with her weaponry, only for an armored soldier to shield Enrique with his body. The power armor resisted an artillery shell, although it made the bodyguard stumble. The rest of the squadron retaliated with lasers, targeting Vulcan first. "Shoot them," Enrique ordered while grabbing a Beretta hidden inside his suit, a hint of anger breaking through his composure. His rose fell off his costume and started growing to colossal size, turning into an abomination of thorny vines. Ryan peeked over the desk only to quickly hide back behind it, a laser barely missing his head and incinerating his beloved head instead. The situation had devolved into an open shootout, lasers and artillery shells flying in all directions. The ceiling started crumbling above them, chairs and office supplies falling through growing holes. "Romano!" Enrique Manada pointed his gun at the courier, while furious vines moved to surround him. "Drop that cashmere suit." "Stay back!" Ryan shouted from his hiding spot, noticing a few pencils and a suit sketch on the desk. "I've got a bottle of Roundup, and I'm not afraid to use it." "You people have gone too far this time," Enrique snarled, his pride wounded. "You think this is a game? Are you high?" "Naturally so." Ryan stopped time as vines lunged at him from all directions, leaping over the desk and grabbing the pencils while at it. When time resumed, Blackthorn's mutant rose crushed the spot where the courier used to hide. Enrique reacted by pointing his gun at the time traveler's chest. Ryan threw the pencils at the manager's hand with near superhuman accuracy, forcing him to drop his weapon. However, before the courier could reach Blackthorn, rope-sized roots broke through the ceiling and attempted to grab him by the neck like a noose. Ouch! So Illinois Migliori's manager could not only control plants in a large radius but boost their growth too. "I guess you should have called yourself Greenhand," Ryan mocked Enrique, but was forced to run away to avoid the deadly plants. The courier rushed at Vulcan's neck, managing to grab his old clothes on the ground while a laser barely missed his shoulder. "G'day," Vulcan ordered, the cockpit opening. Ryan froze time again, climbed on the mech's back, and then slipped inside. Without a pause, Vulcan closed the cockpit and activated the propellers. The mech flew straight through the metal panels covering the windows, shrugging off lasers and thick vines. The vegetal abominations couldn't catch up with the mech once it escaped the building, Enrique glaring at it through the window's hole. Flying Dynamis drones immediately gave chase and fired at Vulcan, who responded by accelerating. Ryan had to grab the genius by the waist to avoid being thrown back by the sheer G-force involved, as the mech flew away towards the Mediterranean Sea. Vulcan kept increasing the speed and lowered her altitude until her mech all but touched the waters, distancing the drones. After a 5 minutes chase, the mech lost its pursuers and decelerated. Once safe, Vulcan and Ryan looked at each other while still high on adrenaline, then erupted into shouts and victory cries. "That was amazing." Vulcan laughed, beaming with joy. "Yeah, right. It's comfy and classy." Ryan examined his new suit. "As if it were made for me. I can't wait to see the news tomorrow morning and the Dynamis press release." Vulcan grinned ears to ears. "It will have been worth it just to see that man-ass face while trying to explain this. He can't even cover it up." "So we win the bet, Chief?" Ryan asked mirthfully. "Oh yes, we do," Vulcan replied with a chuckle. "Handily. I hope there's a prize," Ryan deadpanned, seeing a notification on the screen. "Looks like we're getting a call." "It's the defunct channel from my old Dynamis days," Vulcan said, picking up the call. "Sharif, do you even understand what you have done?" Enrique spoke on the other side of the radio. "You vandalized our HQ to steal a cashmere suit. You think you are above consequences? You should thank us for testing your defenses," Vulcan replied with a grin. "Dynamis won't take this lying down," Enrique replied, his tone laced with menace. "This time, you've pissed into a volcano." Vulcan responded by shutting off the channel. "So what next, Chief?" Ryan asked. "I mean, you're the designated driver there." "Jasmine. You can call me Jasmine when there's no one around." She looked through the screens, checking if anyone followed them so far, but her stealth device worked perfectly. "We're going home." Jamie's house is the other way." Jasmine looked over her shoulder, looking at him as if he were the biggest idiot she had ever met. "We're going to my home." "Oh." Ryan took in her proposal, and while he was short on words for a moment, something quickly came to mind. "Is wyvern the safe word?" Vulcan's hand lunged for Ryan's hair, grabbed it, and forced his head to move within an inch of her own. "Yes it is, smartass," the genius said, showing the courier her bare teeth, "but spoiler warning." Vulcan whispered into his ear. "I won't be listening." It ended as well as expected. With Ryan naked and shackled to a bed, a maniacal Vulcan in a black nightgown on one side, and the plushie on another. It was all a trap, the courier accused the mad genius, straining against the shackles. "You only cared about the plushie." "Very good, Ryan," Jasmine said, playing with her knife. The inactive plushie looked on while sitting on a chair. "Now, tell me everything you know about it." "I would, but I look down on short people." "If you won't talk," Jasmine put the knife against his chin, and her free hand on his chest, "I will make you squeal." "Don't look," Ryan told the inactive plushie, trying to avert its gaze. "Please don't look." A phone called in the other room, interrupting the roleplay. Jasmine let out a heavy sigh. "Gimme a seconds," she said, stepping over an empty condom box before searching for her cell phone among their clothes on the ground. Ryan whistled while she moved out of the bedroom to answer the call. As it turned out, Vulcan didn't live in a luxurious villa, but inside her own foundry. She had repurposed the upper echelons of the area into a spacious, soundproof apartment in an elegant steampunk style. Brass pipes and tin gears formed the main decoration, although Vulcan had also embedded a plasma TV in the bedroom's wall facing the bed. It was rather cozy, and she even included a litter for Jean Henry, although Vulcan clearly didn't clean up the place often. Jasmine eventually returned, rolling her eyes. "Was it Mr. Monsanto again?" Ryan asked. "Neptune. He's pissed about last night and wants to call a meeting because he's a pussy." She let her nightgown fall on the ground, raised the bedsheet, and slipped below. Her naked skin brushed against the courier's own, though she didn't undo his shackles. "Ryan." "Yes?" "Don't ever call me short again." "Come on, Jasmine, be the bigger person." Her knife hit the wall behind the bed, a few inches away from the courier's face. Ryan didn't even blink. By now, he had learned that her bark was worse than her bite. Though bite him she did. "You're lucky to be good in the sack, so you get to live another day," Vulcan said, resting her head against his shoulder. "How many women have you had?" "I lost count," he replied. "Practice made perfect." "I figured as much. I didn't know you could do that with a tongue." Jasmine glanced at the rabbit watching them. "Actually, what is that plushie? Some pieces just don't make sense, and I don't know what to make of the energy readings." "I tried to use it as a probe to explore a higher dimension," Ryan admitted. "And?" Jasmine asked, not even questioning the sanity of it. "It worked?" "Not really. All it did was allow something from the other side to hitch a free ride to our dimension. Now it won't leave." "Wait, you're saying that your rabbit is haunted?" Ryan nodded, and much to his horror, it made Jasmine even more curious. "That dimension, can you describe it?" "It's an area beyond space and time, but I haven't been able to observe it much." He frowned. "Why?" "You know that red genomes can manipulate energy? From lightning to wavelengths." Ryan nodded. "Well, red genomes, real red genomes, actually emit an energy field around them. Like radiation. This ambient energy, this red flux can be captured, stockpiled, and then refined to make batteries. That's how Dynamis makes laser weapons." "And you think this energy comes from another dimension?" Ryan asked, suddenly very curious. I think so, and Dynamis does too, she replied with a nod. The firebrand knockoff elixir alters genes so a genome could perform pyrokinesis, but doesn't create a link to the red dimension. So the body only uses the energy available, that of the human body. That's how your fireman armor enhances their pyrokinesis, Ryan guessed. You take the batteries meant for laser weapons, and you transfer this red flux energy to the genome's body. They become just as powerful as the original pyrokinetic genome the knockoffs are based on, at least as long as the battery juice keeps flowing, Jasmine said with pride. Dynamis has been wasting fortunes in an attempt to create a bridge towards that hypothetical red dimension, though they haven't managed to do so yet. That flux, do you think genomes with other colors produce variants? I suppose, but I haven't been able to observe them. Red is energy, so it's easy to measure it, and since almost all red genomes have offensive applications, my power has an easy time with them. But how do you measure life, like with green genomes? She gave him a knowing smile. Though, if you told me the truth about your power, we could work on it together. Ryan let out a shocked gasp. You know about my true power? Look, that bullshit you told Pluto? About how your power really works? She looked into his eyes. You were just pulling our legs. I thought we did that this morning. She chuckled. Why didn't you call my bluff? Because I'm curious, Jasmine replied, stroking his cheek. You're smart, funny, and the perfect gentleman, yet I can tell you've got your own agenda. I'm just trying to help a friend in need, and find happiness. I don't think that's all there is, Jasmine said. You joined this organization as a stepping stone for something else. It's fine, I'm not particularly loyal to Augustus either. But I'm pretty sure your power is something world-changing. I don't see why you would be afraid to reveal its true extent to Pluto otherwise. Ryan shrugged it off. I think it's a bit too early to talk about that. Vulcan sat on his chest, one leg on each side. Then what will we be, Ryan? I dunno, a summer fling? Ryan needed to blow off steam after his last encounters with Len and the Meta Gang, in more ways than one. I don't want to get too attached, and you're probably going to forget me soon anyway. You aren't going to forget me, Ryan. I can promise you that. Vulcan stroked the courier's cheek. If only she knew. I'm fine with a summer fling, but as I told you before, it's an exclusive contract. Cheat on me and I'll fucking kill you. If you can do the fucking before the kill, I would appreciate it. She lightly slapped him in response. Hey. You've got an attitude problem, but I'll tame you, Ryan. I'll tame you straight. She put both her hands on his ears and ferociously kissed him on the lips, like a lioness marking her territory. You know how to cook? Yep. Good, because I don't. We've got enough time for one more round and breakfast before the meeting. It's Jamie who's going to be unhappy, Ryan pointed out. I was supposed to help them clean up the house in the morning. Well, I'm higher in the hierarchy, so that's in order. Entertain me, minion. Ryan stopped time in response. When it resumed, Jasmine was the one shackled to the bed, the two having switched positions. Fuck, she said. You can actually stop time. You were going to tell me everything about Ishi Island, Miss Sharif, Ryan said, his body towering above her. We have ways of slipping past your defenses. Narchinia is 14, Jasmine smirked at him. She's too old for you. In this case, I will have to pump you for information. Vulcan tried to keep a straight face, but ended up bursting out laughing. She was kinda cute that way. After dressing up and eating a delicious breakfast, Vulcan carried the duo all the way to Mount Augustus with her mech. Obviously, Ryan had put on the cashmere suit, delighting in its glamour and softness. Augustus Estate had looked enormous from afar, but it was even more impressive from above. Ryan estimated it to be around 50 hectares. Located atop a heavily defended hill, the complex included a vast amount of monuments, the most impressive being a copy of the Parthenon to the east. An enormous, multi-floor Roman-themed villa covered roughly a third of the area, a marble palace worthy of a Roman emperor. Most of the land, however, had been repurposed into a vast park, including Roman-themed sculptures, flower gardens, Versailles-styled fountains, and even a freaking zoo. They have giraffes, Ryan said in ecstasy. The sheer luxury of the place awed even the jaded time traveler. Vulcan ended up landing near a swimming pool close to the villa, though a private sea might have been a better term. The enormous body of water was separated into smaller basins, some with fish, some without. A group awaited them on a marble terrace, relaxing under the sun. Livia was among them, sunbathing in a one-piece swimsuit next to Narcinia. Augustus' daughter immediately raised her eyes at Ryan and Vulcan when they emerged from the mech, welcoming them with a warm smile. Pluto was reading a novel on a folding beach chair near her niece, keeping a mummified head on a small table nearby. She looked oddly peaceful for a mass murderer, though the head's eyes moving on their own made the sight look quite macabre. Finally, a group of older people discussed around a table near the villa, drinks in hands. One was a priest in his 50s, with a receding gray hairline and a gaunt face. He was so lanky Ryan could see the bones below the skin, but his black eyes oozed a frightening, almost maddened intensity. His every movement was carefully calculated, and he drank water rather than cocktails. The priest, whom Ryan suspected to be Bacchus, was talking with a man entirely covered in thick armor. His equipment was heavily inspired by a Roman centurion's dress, though it covered every part of the body and included a crimson cloak. The helmet included a metal face mask, and the time traveler couldn't see the eyes beneath. The only woman of the group was a blonde woman in her 40s, straight out of a Playboy magazine. She kept her hair in a bun and wore an ancient Rome-style dress adorned with gemstones. Though he could see only the lower part of her face and sapphire eyes due to a gold-plated masquerade mask, Ryan noted a family resemblance with Fortuna in that woman's jawline. She was probably the lucky girl's mother, keeping her arm around the red centurions. The last man around the table was clearly the oldest, somewhere in his 60s. He had dyed his hair and thick long beard blue, which complemented his eyes. He wore no mask except a golden diadem and dressed in an elegant navy blue business suit including seashells as part of the design. The old man instantly glared at Ryan and Vulcan upon seeing them, leaving the table with a dark look on his face. Much like Pluto and Minerva, the family resemblance was unmistakable. "That's Neptune," Jasmine pointed out the obvious. "I could tell," Ryan replied, waves starting to form out of nowhere in the swimming pool. Clearly, he was jealous of the courier's better suit. "Can he drain the water within us?" with a thought. "Thankfully not." His girlfriend smirked. "He's an orange, so organic matter interferes with his power. Besides, he is a macro-hydrokinetic. The bigger the water volume, the greater his control. The priest is Bacchus, the couple is Mars and Venus, and the mummified head is Mercury. I imagined him taller." "Mercury is a paranoid loon who doesn't leave his home," Vulcan snickered. "He can reanimate corpses and command them, so he sends them on missions." "Ryan, Vulcan." Narcinia waved a hand at the couple upon noticing them. "Welcome to Mount Augustus," Livia said, though she didn't rise up from her long chair. "A true queen. We were just discussing yesterday's events. I admit you were right, I couldn't anticipate anything like it." "Did we win a prize?" Ryan asked. "Personally, I would settle for a statue in my honor." "Marble or gold?" Livia replied with a wink, examining his suit. "I love it. It's classy. Ooh, I could add a few flowers if you want," Narcinia told Ryan. "Nah, I used all my weed killer on Blackthorn," Ryan said, Jasmine smirking. The banter was interrupted by a very furious Neptune. "You little, irresponsible brats," he snarled, pointing a finger at Jasmine and Ryan. "I should drown the both of you right now." "Can you do it in Coca-Cola?" Ryan asked innocently. Much to his surprise, Vulcan didn't smash his foot to silence him, and instead bantered back. "It's like being drowned in acid," Jasmine told him. "Diabetes acid." "Yes, so my death will be quicker." "Do you have any idea what you did?" Neptune thundered. "Vulcan, you and your soldier could have sparked an all-out war." "Uncle, they did it on my orders," Livia spoke up calmly. "I will take full responsibility for this." It was still stupid, Neptune snarled. Blackthorn labeled your prank as a terrorist attack, promising retaliation. Enrique must have suppressed the part where I undressed and put on the suit, Ryan said. Pluto, who had listened to the conversation, clearly struggled to contain her laughter, much to Ryan's shock. Neptune glared at her. Am I the only one here having a problem with this fiasco? We were young too, Silvio, Pluto replied, more amused than anything. What's wrong with letting them indulge a little? I strongly suspect Hector Manida to have hired the Metagang to harass us, Olivia said, all business. This was a calculated attempt to put them back in their place. By stealing a suit? Her uncle asked with heavy sarcasm, clearly not believing his niece. Did you summon us to bitch about it? Jasmine asked with a shrug. 'Cause we got important work to do. There's also the matter of Mercury's replacement, Olivia explained. As we discussed in our previous meeting, I stand by my decision to retire, the mummified head spoke with an old, weary voice, startling Ryan. I've grown too old for this. Marco, last time I met you in the flesh you were lively for someone past pushing 90. Ryan turned towards the speaker, Mars. The Roman cosplayer had risen from his table to meet the group, his wife holding his arm. Bacchus followed his hands behind his back. You're still one of our best. I personally know someone older than you with a youthful attitude, Pluto said while giving Ryan a knowing smile. I've lived through 3 generations of the Camorra, children, yours included, the talking head said. I'm weary, I've earned more money than I could ever use, and I have no family left. I believe it's time I buy a private island and spend the rest of my days drinking margaritas on the beach. This will wait until after their punishment, Neptune said, still glaring at Vulcan and Quicksave. For what, giving Dynamis their due? Venus spoke up, greeting Ryan and Jasmine with a nod. Did you see Felix during your attack, Vulcan? Vulcan shook her head. No, only Blackthorn. They didn't react fast enough to send heroes after us. A shame, the Centurion greeted Ryan before shaking his hand. Greetings, I'm Mars, though you can call me Luca. I appreciate you looking for my daughter at that party. We had goat fights, Narcinia said innocently. Oh, by the way, what happened to Shubnigareth? Ryan asked with concern. Is she alright? A guy and his girlfriend took her home, Narcinia said. They said they would put her to good use, but when I asked which one, they just put a hand on my head and smiled. Mars burst out laughing, while Venus glared at her husband. I've got enough with a cat, Jasmine whispered into Ryan's ear. I'm not taking a goat. Well, I admit I'm torn, Ryan whispered back, shuddering. I don't know where she has loitered. Back to the important subject, Neptune cut through the chit-chat. Tensions with Dynamis are at an all-time high and they can't tolerate a direct attack on their HQ. They will strike back, if only to keep face. War now would be a tragedy, Bacchus said, his voice soft and soothing like honey. He had remained silent for a while, listening to everyone. Thanks to Ceres, we are on the verge of achieving heaven. A conflict with Dynamis will interfere with that. You and your heaven? Venus rolled her eyes. He is right though, war is bad for business, Mercury said. It's not always about the money, old man, Pluto replied icily. Sometimes, it's about respect. Do you want Alphonse Manida back in town? Neptune sneered at his sister. Because they will recall that madman if we push them too far, and then there will be blood in the streets. Ryan didn't say anything while they argued, trying to assess how every member of the Augusti High Command fit in. They were clearly divided into a moderate, business-minded faction and more brutal warmongers. Narcinia said nothing, too young to assert herself, but her presence at this gathering implied that she served a key role in the organization. And Livia oversaw the group discussion like a lioness observing her pack. Though in the end, Ryan's main quest was to destroy the lab and settle his deal with Shroud. So, how did a priest end up making drugs? He asked Bacchus. I don't think that's very Catholic. God works in mysterious ways, the priest replied calmly. All sins are forgiven, if done to reach heaven. I don't think that's how religion works, Father. Ryan. Narcinia nagged him, before turning to the priest. "He doesn't know what he says, Father Torque." "It is fine," the priest replied, his eyes peering into Ryan's own with disturbing intensity. The courier suddenly realized this man hadn't blinked once in the entire conversation. "You may not believe in God, but I assure you, it does exist. I've seen it with my own eyes, in all of its divine glory." "It?" Ryan asked with a frown, while Jasmine rolled her eyes. "Don't get him started with this," Venus interrupted them. "As for the Manada, we should have wiped them out years ago. That clan has been nothing but a thorn in our collective foot." "Honey." Mars tried to calm his wife. "They took our son," she complained. "In the old days, we would have slaughtered them for less. Felix is just having a rebellious phase." Ironically, for God of War, Mars seemed rather laid back. He is a naive boy transitioning into a mature man. He will come back into the fold, eventually. Livia's eyes turned to cold steel upon hearing this. She grabbed a towel to cover her shoulders and rose from her long chair. "He won't, and there will be no punishment for yesterday night." "Livia," Neptune began. "That is for Father to decide," she interrupted her uncle, "and you know he will see things my way." Neptune flinched. "You called him?" Livia nodded slowly, while the air grew oppressive. An electrical tension spread through the atmosphere, like during a thunderstorm's approach. Everyone tensed up except for Livia herself. The villa's doors slowly opened, everyone staring at them in utter silence. Even Ryan, who was usually unflappable, remained still. A towering, shining figure stepped through the threshold. A faint halo of crimson electricity surrounded his body, making it difficult for people to look directly at him. When he focused though, Ryan began to distinguish the shape of an aging man wearing a toga beneath the electrical shroud. But when the courier looked into this man's cold gaze, he realized that age hadn't dimmed his brutality one bit. "My daughter," Augustus said, his voice echoing with the sound of booming thunder. "Why have you called me?" The entire Augusti High Command had gathered around a table near the villa, and none of its members dared to speak. Allowed to sit between Vulcan and Livia at the Mafia Princess' behest, Ryan kept his arms crossed as he observed the scene. The various Olympians formed a circle, all of them eyeing their leader warily. Mercury's mummified head had been placed at the edge near Pluto, while Narcinia sat with her parents. Mars kept an arm behind his chair, clearly the most relaxed of all people present. And Bacchus. The man made Ryan curious. The priest never blinked or betrayed any facial micro-expression. And instead of looking at Augustus like the rest, his focus remained entirely on Livia. Augustus listened to his brother Neptune retelling him the events of last night, his body shrouded in a halo of lightning. It made it impossible to clearly distinguish his face, and the man radiated power in more ways than one. Ryan couldn't shake the pervading aura of dread around the table, as if everyone worried they might get punished for a minor offense. Even Ryan didn't crack a joke. He didn't know the limits of Augustus' invulnerability except that most powers failed to work on him. For all he knew, the Lightning Emperor might be a wight interfering with other abilities the way Cancel did. And unlike Vulcan, Augustus struck the courier as someone who killed at the slightest provocation. Mob Zeus joined his hands once the tale finished. Obviously, Neptune had presented the attack as an irresponsible prank instead of a carefully prepared suit rescue mission, but his brother didn't seem to care. "You summoned me for something this trivial. Dynamis will retaliate," Neptune pointed out. "The incident was public. They dared to take our son," Venus spoke up, her wiser husband immediately putting a hand on her arm to dissuade her to speak. "All in vain. This is simply retaliati. His parentage is the only reason Felix's head isn't in a bag right now." The cold certainty in Augustus' voice made Adam Katz's entire family flinch. Narcinia, in particular, looked at her feet to avoid facing Mob Zeus. "Abandoning his duties is one thing, but I cannot stand rats." "He is your godson, Janus," Mars said with the familiarity of a trusted lieutenant. He alone didn't seem to fear Augustus, with the exception of the mob boss' close family members. Enough to use the man's real name. "He is a traitor who broke my daughter's heart," the Lightning Emperor of Italy replied, Livia's face a stone mask. To think I once expected to call him my son-in-law one day. Just give us time, Mars argued, unabated. We will reason with him. I shall show mercy to Felix, due to the strong bond between our respective families, Augustus replied. But I never want to see him again, and if he takes arms against us, there will be consequences. A tense silence fell on the table, Mob Zeus turning his head towards Ryan and Vulcan. While she remained outwardly strong, the courier sensed the genius clench her fist below the table. The courier took her hand with his own, helping her relax a little. You, Augustus told Ryan, suddenly noticing the genome's existence. Who are you? Quick save, sir, the courier said. I'm immortal, but don't tell anyone. Gods and men are only equal in one thing, and that is death. Mob Zeus examined Ryan closely. You do not fear me as much as you should. Ryan waited briefly, in case it was rhetorical, before realizing that Lightning Butt wanted an answer. Augustus did sound a lot less threatening when the courier called him that in his head. Well, sir, with all due respect, the genome said, I've seen far worse than you. Augustus observed him without a word, and it started to hurt just looking at this thunder elemental. The silence grew more and more oppressive until Lightning Butt turned his deadly attention to Vulcan, as Ryan's superior. What is his power? Alternate reality jumping, Vulcan lied. Lies. Augustus said it without raising his tone, but the electrical tension in the air increased tenfold. All gazes turned at Vulcan, while Pluto eyed Ryan sharply. What is his power? Augustus repeated, the crimson aura around him growing in intensity. I don't know, Vulcan admitted. I don't understand it yet. Augustus let the silence set in, until Jasmine had to look away to avoid eye damage from the light. The mere unspoken threat of violence cowed the proud genius. The wise woman admits her own ignorance, Vulcan, Lightning Butt said while trying to sound profound, before asking the other capos, who is he? Ryan Romano, real name Cesare Sabino, Mercury said through the mummified skull. Son of Freddy Sabino, alias Bloodstream. A blood-controlling psycho killed by the carnival 4 years ago. It took everything for Ryan not to make a face of pure disgust, cursing all the times Bloodstream had introduced him to strangers using that name. He had believed in that delusion so much, that he convinced everyone else it was the truth. Strangely though, he did notice Livia's face softening when Mercury mentioned the carnival. She glanced at Ryan with what the courier took for a look of sympathy. Augustus' halo, meanwhile, flashed brighter for a second before returning to normal. Bloodstream. Mars spoke up, remembering something. Yeah, I remember him. That body-jacking maniac whacked a few of our guys back in the day. Jasmine's eyes widened as if she reached the eureka moment. Wait, she's your sister? I don't want to talk about it, Ryan replied dryly. And all that time I thought you wanted to. Jasmine caught her breath. Never mind. Augustus kept his attention focused on Ryan. What is your power? I told you, sir, the courier replied. I'm immortal. Quick save is a violet who can affect alternate universes, usually to avoid death, Livia spoke up on Ryan's behalf. His abilities will help me develop mine. The Emperor joined those fingers together. You will vouch for him, my daughter? Yes. Lightning Butt nodded to himself, before turning to his sister. I marked him, Pluto said, smoking her cigarette. He provided valuable services so far, but if he steps out of line, I'll whack him. After one last cursory glance at the courier, Augustus dropped the subject and turned to Livia next. My daughter, you approved of this attack? Yes, I did, Livia replied calmly. Then why are we talking about it? Janus, Neptune cleared his throat. This is serious. Minerva is my heir and speaks with my voice, Lightning Butt replied with disdain. Your role is to advise and mentor her, not to question her orders. Neptune joined those hands, clearly unhappy with this turn of events. Then what? We prepare for war. Even if we win, it won't be without heavy casualties. There will be no war, Livia said with absolute confidence. The Manada will retaliate in a public manner, yes, But Hector will rein in his sons before things degenerate. He is just as afraid of a prolonged conflict as you are, uncle. Which is why he hired Adam the Ogre to attack us while maintaining plausible deniability. Do you have any proof of that? Mercury spoke up. I could not find any evidence, and from what Vulcan told us, Dynamis tried to wipe out the psycho trash after she drove them out of Rust Town. Yes, I am certain, Livia said. I believe that either Adam double-crossed his corporate masters to pursue his own agenda, or Hector decided to erase the evidence. What do we do about the Meta Gang, brother? Pluto asked, lighting a cigarette. Wipe them out, Augustus declared. I want them all dead, to the last man. Is it worth it? Venus asked. They ran away. You leave your enemies alive, and they will return to torment you, Augustus replied, his voice chilling. I will not take the risk. No man, no problem. Don't care about the resources needed, don't care how long it takes, don't care if it is disproportionate. Kill them all. And like that, Lightning Butt signed the entire Metagang's death warrant. Pluto exchanged a glance with her niece and Vulcan, and Ryan could tell that they had already decided to cooperate to make that judgment a reality. What next? Augustus asked abruptly. My retirement, Mercury spoke through the mummified head. That's a shame, the lightning elemental said, a hint of emotion breaking through his unflappable demeanor. Your departure diminishes us all. It's about time I pass the torch too, Mercury replied. I have the perfect candidate to take over my division. Jamie Cutter, Mars guest, Ryan immediately glancing at him. Zimbardo. Good soldier. Jamie has been nothing but loyal and competent since we introduced him into our organization, Mercury said with pride. Men respect him, he's trustworthy, and he gets results. Most capos around the table voiced their agreements, Vulcan included. Though with one lone exception. I am against his ascension. Bacchus opened his mouth for the first time, his soothing voice somehow cutting through the noisy discussion. His opinions on Bliss worry me, and my division relies on supply runs from Mercury's. I was against selling narcotics too at first, Mercury said with what appeared to be a shrug. But I knew my place, and so will the boy. Zimbardo's loyalty to our organization will always trump his personal values, Livia voiced her opinion. We made him who he's in more ways than one, and he will never forget that. I validate his candidacy. Augustus listened without a word, before reaching a decision. Very well, my old friend, he told the mummified head. Zimbardo shall take your place as the new Mercury, and you shall be released from service. My home will always remain open to you. Zimbardo's power does not fit the theme though, Pluto mused out loud with an amused smile. Perhaps he should take another name. Hercules maybe? That will annoy Dynamis, Venus said with a smirk, both women exchanging a chuckle. No, the name stays, Augustus quickly decided. But he will change his costume. Vulcan. Yes? Jasmine quickly spoke up. You will build Zimbardo equipment worthy of his new divine station, Lightning Butt ordered. Costs are not an issue. I will. She nodded hurriedly, eager to make the invincible man forget the previous incident. What else? Augustus asked, immediately moving on. We are close to a breakthrough with Bliss, Bacchus spoke up, Narcinia shifting on her seat. I can feel it. A strain pure enough to speak with God. Your obsession with refining this product worries me, Venus said, glancing at Narcinia. You overwork my daughter for a pipe dream. It's fine, Mom, Narcinia replied with a bright smile. We are making something wonderful. Indeed, the priest said with a sharp nod. Ryan realized that he only participated when it impacted the matter of Bliss, and ignored everything else. This tribulation will soon reach its end. However, I worry about theft. Guys send strangers testing our defenses lately. Strangers? Pluto asked with a frown. The Meta? Dynamis? He couldn't tell. Bacchus looked at Vulcan. You would have my full gratitude if you could take time to improve our sanctuary's defensive perimeter. Jasmine made a frustrated face. The defenses I said are already perfect. I am not so certain, unfortunately, Livia said. The odds of an attack on Ischia have been increasing lately. Dynamis, the Meta, they can attack that island all they want, Vulcan snickered. They won't get in. I still wish that we review them together, Livia said with a calm smile. The princess voiced it like a request, but Jasmine knew it was anything but. The genius breathed inwardly and said nothing. Do you need our assistance, Minerva? Mars spoke up, his wife stiffening at his side. If anything endangers Narcinia. I do not think your presence will be necessary, at least at this stage, the Mafia princess said, a smile on her lips. We can handle ourselves. Augustus didn't seem interested in the subject, and the discussion moved on to a boring activity report. As he listened, Ryan learned more about which capo oversaw which part of the organization. Bacchus controlled the drug division, which involved Narcinia in its production. Vulcan managed the weapon trafficking, while Mercury handled gambling, casinos, and money laundering activities. Mars and Venus managed the prostitution and pornography wing of the organization. Finally, Pluto, meanwhile, handled hits, assassinations, and alternative protection services, while Neptune oversaw most of the organization's legitimate front businesses. Augustus didn't say much during the entire conversation, letting his daughter speak in his place. Livia discussed the Bliss production, the organization's revenues, where to invest, and so on. All in all, Mobzus seemed completely uninterested in the logistics of his own empire. He only cared about his family's authority and those who dared challenge it. He was a warlord, not a king. I think we are finished, Neptune said upon finishing his own report. We are. Augustus rose to his feet once he had heard enough. Clearly, he was not one to waste time with pleasantries. Livia will take care of the rest. Do not bother me again. The Lightning Emperor quickly vanished inside the villa without a sound, the crimson halo disappearing with the man himself. Pluto and Neptune exchanged silent glances with Livia as if exchanging a silent message. Ryan couldn't explain why, but he had the intuition something was at work there. Narcinia, we're going home, Venus told her daughter, as she and her husband left the table. Mercury's mummified head had lost all semblance of life, the necromancer behind the line having ended the call. We'll pick up your sister on the way. I thought she was at Zambardo's house? Mars asked, a little surprised. No, she stayed at her boyfriend's place, and wants to present him to us. Venus shook her head. She is moving too fast if you ask me. I hope he has powers, Mars said, with the same tone of a racist father saying I hope he's white. See you soon. Narcinia waved a hand at Ryan and Livia. The family politely saluted the other people present, before leaving through the park. I will take my leave too, Bacchus declared, turning to Livia. Will you test the refined strain, Minerva? I doubt so, the Mafia princess replied with a distant gaze. I cannot see what happens in alternate realities after I take your Bliss strain. The risk is too great. Please give it thought, the priest argued. A blue of your power might be the key to a divine revelation. Augustus' daughter dismissed him without an answer, and the priest responded with a formal bow. Vulcan, quick save, he nodded at the two before leaving. I will see you on Ischia Island. Neptune looked at Vulcan and Ryan with a frustrated gaze, before raising his hands in surrender and leaving for the villa. Pluto moved to her spot near the swimming pool and continued her book where she had left it. Quick save, she said while picking up her novel. Yes, Cruella? My niece's mercy is the only reason you still draw breath, Pluto replied while flipping her book's pages. Never forget that. Such nice, friendly people. You look adorable together, Livia told Ryan and Jasmine with a warm smile, once everyone had left the gathering. It's another surprise. Once almost everyone had left the gathering, Jasmine realized she hadn't let Ryan's hand go, and quickly broke contact. I don't need help, she told him, glancing away. It was nice, but I don't need help. Sure, I will adopt a hands-off policy then. The genius chuckled. Your jokes aren't good, Ryan. But you are, I will give you that. But thank you. The courier winked back, before turning to Livia. Did you know how everything at this meeting would turn out? Yes, with one exception, she said with apathy. When my father turned to look at you, everything afterward was completely unplanned. So she couldn't read the time traveler at all. Good. Ryan didn't know how he could handle someone capable of predicting his actions before he even thought of them. Still, he felt some sympathy for that girl. Her situation was not so different from his own, living in a rehearsed reality while desperate for new stimuli. And she had probably talked her father out of murdering him on the spot. I would appreciate it if you announced to Zamboto the news of his promotion, Olivia said with formal dignity. I believe he will be less embarrassed if it comes from a friend rather than a direct superior. Sure, that will make more drinks for us when we celebrate, Ryan replied, though he couldn't suppress his curiosity. What did you mean when you say that you met him? We have a war chest of elixirs, Olivia explained. Originals that we collected before they could be used, or knockoffs we requisitioned from our corporate competition. When unpowered foot soldiers prove themselves worthy of ascension through merit and loyalty, they are granted a potion. Jamie was among them. And about your father? Can't I call him Lightning Dad? Not to his face, Olivia chuckled, while Jasmine rolled her eyes. Rome had co-emperors, one elder Augustus, and a junior Caesar groomed to take his place. He is giving me more leeway as time goes on. I apologize for, well, how he treated the both of you. My father thrived in more violent times. At least he gets shit done, Vulcan replied, having recovered enough to snicker. Unlike the suits on the other side of town. I still don't get why you spoke on my behalf though, Ryan admitted. Call me a good judge of character, but I can tell you are a great friend if treated with respect, Olivia said, a hint of sadness breaking through her composure. And I can tell you are in great pain, deep within. Ryan's mood turned sour. Do you want it? He asked Olivia, finding the current situation a little too familiar to his liking. To follow in your father's footsteps. The Mafia princess had an excellent poker face, but the courier had mastered the art of reading micro-expressions over his endless wandering. She was good, but couldn't quite hide the unease beneath. Careful, Ryan. Olivia gave him a strained smile. Here be dragons. Ruins of Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina, October 2014. Constructed inside a valley surrounded by 5 mountains, Sarajevo had once been a beautiful place. A perfect mix of small, pastoral houses and tall modern buildings, the city had housed events such as the 1984 Winter Olympic Games, survived the Yugoslavian wars, and thrived in the aftermath. But that was long ago. Today, Sarajevo was a vision of hell. A steel graveyard ruled by a madman, its skies dark even during the brightest days. Only decaying ruins remained of the old city, consumed by a noxious purple cloud. The other buildings were factories, weapon development facilities, turrets, and fearsome towers of black steel. The tallest structure was Mekran's fortress located in Sarajevo's center, an infinity symbol-shaped fusion between a military base and a particle accelerator. Finally, pylons on the valley's mountains projected a red force field around the city, one powerful enough to shrug off NATO's bombs. This miasma covering the city was a bioplague created to kill humans, leaving only machines unharmed. Robots prowled the streets, from futuristic automated tanks to humanoid, 2 meters tall cyclops, while flying drones occupied the skies. Some of these machines were cyborgs, half-rotten corpses partly reanimated with tech when Mekran ran out of rare. The machine army stood there, organized into defensive formations, waiting for the battle to start without wasting any ounce of energy. Even the river Miljacka, which once crossed the city, had been dried up. When he looked at this tragedy from the heavens above, Leonard Hargraves could only feel sadness. The genome wars had started here 9 years ago. And one way or another, they would end today. Even long after he caused the end of the world, Mekran remained a mystery. Pythia pieced together that he was a survivor of the Bosnian genocide and the siege of Sarajevo in the mid-90s, an electric engineer by trade. His first act upon gaining his elixir had been a terrorist attack against the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia for its perceived softness on war criminals, before escalating to waging war on Serbia. Things quickly erupted into a European conflict, and then finally a nuclear exchange. Mekran had spent the entirety of the Genome Wars bunkering in Sarajevo, letting his machines and genome allies fight for him. The anti-Mekran front had slowly destroyed his major bases and killed his lieutenants over the last 6 years, and today, they finally gathered enough heroes to end the conflict once and for all. "We're ready?" Leo spoke. "Yes." The voice of Alice Martel, alias Pythia, answered through telepathy. Shining Knight and Nighthawk's groups are in position. While he was proud to fight alongside the Shining Knight, Nighthawk's involvement left a sour taste in Leo's mouth. Though he kept to his territory and didn't cause troubles unless provoked, that man was a villain, plain and simple. His followers had taken over a large part of Denmark and allowed their geniuses to run some questionable medical experiments there. Unfortunately, the anti-Mekran front couldn't take Sarajevo without assistance, and the war had called for moral compromises. Nighthawk was willing to help when so many wouldn't, even crossing half a continent to offer support. While he acted out of self-preservation, this green genome understood Mekran was an existential threat to all of mankind, and that he had to be stopped at all costs. So while they might end up enemies one day, Leo would cut him some slack and they would part ways amicably. The living son gave one last glance at the Iron City from his current high altitude before flying back to base at the speed of a fighter jet. Leonard's human body had been transmuted into a living star, a massive solar plasma only held together by a hard core and his own gravitational forces. Though he didn't age in his sun form, the genome usually returned to his human self while not on missions, as he felt less like himself the longer he stayed transformed. His thoughts changed from human to that of a star, wishing to burn bright and illuminate the cosmos. It was a constant mental effort for Leo to contain his radiance and avoid burning everything around him. Sometimes, he felt like he lived in a world of matchboxes. Today would be a rare opportunity to go all out. Maybe his last one. In total, more than 500 genomes had gathered in 3 camps around Sarajevo. Normal humans couldn't survive Mekran's bioplague, nor stand against his machines, and so did not apply. Leonard flew over the camp, where everyone was gearing up for war. The plague Dr. Stitch finished inoculating the soldiers with additional protections against bioplagues. The Cossack had put on his white, night-themed power armor, a cannon mounted on his right shoulder and a force field shield on the other. Kresnik and Kudlik, the werewolf siblings, had transformed into giant humanoid wolves the size of polar bears, one white, the other black. A violet summoned war beasts from alien planets to serve as shock troops, while orange genomes transformed into beings of metal and stone. Alice was networking people near the camp center, with sidekicks standing nearby to boost her power. A beautiful blonde woman with blue eyes, Alice was a powerful seer with the ability to create telepathic links between people upon touching them. Those she networked worked intuitively together like a hive mind, much like Mekran's robot army formed a superorganism spread through countless bodies. Besides increasing teamwork, Pythia's power could also be used for precognitive purposes. The more people she networked with, the more she could anticipate the future. In many ways, she had been the driving force behind this alliance. Today's battle would be the culmination of her chess match with Mekran, and the heroes would be her pieces. Sidekick, meanwhile, was an average-looking youth with brown hair and amber eyes. He belonged to Shining Knight's group, being a white enhancing the power of other genomes so long as they remained within 10 meters of his person. The trio would soon be rejoined by Calculator, a genius with the ability to calculate probabilities to the point of precognition. Pythia, Calculator, and many other blue genomes had debated the plan of attack. From nuking Sarajevo to a guerrilla battle, everything had been considered. Leo didn't know what made them decide on a conventional invasion, besides mentions of a dead-hand system, but he trusted their judgment. Some, like Pythia, were members of Leo's carnival. Others were hero warbands or vigilantes like the Cossack, who answered the call to war. Dynamis hadn't sent anyone, though they did provide equipment. They were too busy dealing with Augustus in Italy. The mere thought of his nemesis infuriated Leonard, reminding him of that dreadful day he returned to the Costa farm, only to find all its inhabitants murdered. He had sworn to bring their killer to justice, and once Mecron was dealt with, he would do exactly that. The living sun, though he disliked that nickname, landed near Alice, toning down his body heat to prevent her from catching fire. "Leonard," she said with a warm smile. Unlike the genomes making up the army, she dressed casually. "Ready? Like the day I was born." Even before the apocalypse, Leonard had been a full-time firefighter in the London Fire Brigade. Quite ironic considering his main power. He liked to think he still put out fires threatening the innocents, even if some could shoot lightning from their eyes. "How much time do we have?" "Enough for one last speech, if you're up for it." She tried humor, but Leonard didn't hide his concern for his old ally. "You're sure you want to do this?" he asked her. "You have never networked so many people at once, even with help from Sidekick." "We can't outthink a combat AI without the use of powers," Pythia replied. "Mecron's armies are so effective because they fight as one. They have us outnumbered more than 1,000 to 1. Even if we have superpowers on our side, we need all advantages possible. I'm just saying the risks are great." She often suffered from dangerous headaches when she directed a large group, and never one this big. "Unlike me, you still have a husband and son at home. It's precisely for them that I'm willing to risk everything." Leonard couldn't argue with that. As if on cue, the various fighters gathered around them. Most were veterans of a dozen battles, others were new recruits. Leonard noticed a few of his other teammates among them. The teleporter-ace, a freckled young woman with long auburn hair, dressed like a rogue with high boots, a red coat, and feathered hat. And Mr. Wave, a creature of pure energy wavelengths held together in a fancy purple suit. Every set of eyes was on Leo. "I'm not one for speeches," the red genome declared. Shining Knight and Nighthawk were probably speaking with their troops, miles away. "So I will be short and to the point. This is it. This is the final battle. Mecron is exhausted. His facilities, those which we could locate, have been destroyed. His last genome lieutenant, Asmodeus, has been slain. He's low on troops, low on weapons, low on options. This is his last stand, and he knows it. The news should be a relief, for all of us have lost something to this madman. Family. Friends. Home. But as they say, a cornered rat will bite a cat," Ace mused, a few people chuckling among the audience. "We know, you say that all the time. But this time, the rat may very well kill the cat," Leo rolled with the metaphor. At Pythia's behest, a light-manipulating genome projected the image of two massive war machines behind Leonard. Enormous satellites equipped with solar cells and enormous laser cannons. "These are the Kujata and the Bahamut, orbital satellites with the power to devastate entire countries," Leonard explained. Mecron's previous orbital weapons remained in low Earth orbit, where they could be destroyed. The new ones, though, will fly deep into space, and even I won't be able to reach them. In a few hours, maybe minutes, Mecron will attempt to launch them and wipe us all out. Whispers spread through the crowd, as the grim reality of the situation settled among them. "I know some of you, myself included, were a bit apprehensive with the help we enlisted to wage this war. But this is not a battle between nations, or between heroes and villains. This is a battle between life and death. And more than ever, this is a battle against time. Our goals are twofold: to destroy these satellites before they can be activated, and to defeat Mecron once and for all. Over the past few months, we have methodically cut off his escape routes. Today, we fight to the death." "Good," Cossack said, his tone dangerous. "Mecron's death." "Yes," Leonard agreed. "Mecron surrendered his humanity long ago. He desires to destroy all that makes us human. To replace our hearts with metal, and our souls with technology. He is a despot who believes man should be his slaves because he only sees the worst in us. But he is wrong." The living sun raised his hand, the satellites beyond him collapsing in a flash of bright light. "Humans are not slaves," he shouted. "Mecron chose to see the worst, but we chose to see the best. That humans are capable of compassion, of art and kindness. of greatness. And together, we shall end this decade-long nightmare once and for all. Today, we take back our planet. His declaration was met with a cacophony of shouts and war cries. Immediately afterward, Leonard flew across the skies, followed by dozens of flyers. The Cossack's armor activated the powerful propellers in its back. A chrome humanoid flew by his will alone. The ground forces moved towards the shield-barred assault vehicles or carried by teleporters. Now, the moment of truth. Leonard flew above the clouds, facing the shield. He built up the energy inside his core, preparing to go supernova. And then, he set the world ablaze. His hard core unleashed a focused ray of light that burnt the skies. The ionized laser hit the crimson force field and the mountain supporting one of the pylons, melting the stone. The force field undulated like water as it took the blast, an unstoppable force facing an immovable object. And then, one of them gave up. The force field around Sarajevo shorted out, and Leo's beam vaporized the pylon supporting it. The blast continued its course towards the city, setting an entire street ablaze in a cataclysmic detonation. The shield collapsed all around the city, and Mekran's army woke up. Spherical drones instantly spread across the skies like a bug swarm, opening fire on the heroes with lasers. Holes opened all over the metal towers, revealing hundreds of beam turrets, while the robots and vehicles on the ground opened with an artillery bombardment. Leo's flying allies moved to intercept the drone swarm, while the fire genome recovered from his effort. While he could draw on an enormous power reserve, it needed time to replenish itself. With the shield down, the other groups moved to action. A flash of green light illuminated the darkness to the east, Nighthawk undergoing his transformation. The green genome metamorphosed into a colossal, kilometers-long serpent with human skulls for scales. The monster slithered towards the city, his venom melting stone while his own forces followed. Purple blinking lights popped up all over Sarajevo, as Ace teleported small groups across the city. Explosions shook Sarajevo to the west, the shining night having entered the city. While no heavy hitter, the charismatic leader of men led her troops personally in battle, her heavy green armor shrugging lasers while she cut robots with her bright energy sword. Her contingent was by far the largest, providing almost half of the genomes participating. Most were the defenders of a democratic state rising from Germany's ashes, the new Republic of Bavaria. Mekran had destroyed their home once, and now they would see justice done. Having recovered, Leo flew into the city, followed by the Cossack and some Cape fellow. Their allies had cleared a path ahead, engaging the drone swarms, but faced heavy resistance. The towers unleashed hundreds of lasers in all directions, cutting genomes and buildings alike, while artillery bombardments from the defensive turrets destroyed almost every ruined building still standing. And of course, Mr. Wave couldn't help but brag. The show-off had moved in the middle of a robot-crowded street, hands raised. "Can you feel fear, robots?" The robots had opened fire mid-speech, but lasers and bullets harmlessly phased through the red genome. Because Mr. Wave feeds on tears. Mr. Wave vanished, his wavelength body turning into a deadly laser moving at light speed. Before Leo knew it, his teammate had carved a path through the robots, cutting the machines in half merely by moving through them. Meanwhile, the werewolf siblings were busy tearing apart a tank with their bare claws, leading a pack of monsters. The Cape fellow charged at one of the metal towers and brought it down by going through it. The other flyers spread to support the ground forces, while Leonard and Cossack moved towards Mekran's fortress. The enormous base's walls opened, waves of jetpack-powered robots flying towards them armed with heavy rifles. They immediately fired a volley of black projectiles at the duo, forcing them to spread out. Though they moved slowly, the robots' bullets powered through any matter, absorbing anything close to them. Gravity rifles. Leonard had faced a few in previous engagements, and one had almost torn his core apart. He suspected Mekran had specifically designed the weapon to kill energy-based genomes like him. Leonard retaliated with plasma beams, while the Cossack hit the machines with his shoulder cannon. Both sides aimed with deadly accuracy and moved around with grace. The machines dodged with inhuman dexterity and reflexes, while the genomes had speed on their side. Guided by Pythia's network, Leonard entered some kind of trance, his body moving on its own. It was as if a primal instinct had taken over, shutting down his conscious mind and leaving only a battle program. He became no different than the machines he fought. No, Leo realized. He was different from these machines. Pythia's network let each individual keep their free will, yet allowed people from different backgrounds and who had nothing in common, to cooperate for a common cause. Their army was united in its diversity, while Mecron's machines were mindless copies. Soulless slaves to a despot who considered free will as a disease, rather than something to be cherished. And at some point, Pythia's network began to outperform Mecron's robotic hive mind. Leonard hit one robot, then two, then three. The numbers kept climbing, but the genome's view had been reduced to blasts, black bullets, and burning metal. 50, 70? When will they learn? The Cossack asked, bombarding drones with his shoulder cannon. Leo assisted him with plasma blasts, the two wingmates coordinating their assault with perfect synchronization. Pythia's network even allowed them to hear each other over the explosions, as astonishing as it sounded. And yet, in spite of their impressive resistance, more robots kept coming. There was something terrifying in fighting these machines. Humans and animals could feel fear, fleeing lost battles, often hesitating before attacking, or attempted to communicate. But not Mecron's robots. They felt no remorse, didn't make a sound and never retreated. Leo fought an unrelenting tide of steel that just wanted him dead. Still, the battle seemed to be going well for them. The Shining Knight's troops held the line on the western side, while Nighthawk had reached the city, toppling buildings and crushing a laser tower under his sheer weight. The corpses of Mecron's undead cyborgs were absorbed by the giant reptile on contact, regenerating his biomass lost to the enemy's energy weaponry. Once transformed, Nighthawk was almost unstoppable. A juggernaut fueled by death. His troops followed in his wake, genomes modified with cybernetic or biological implants. Like remores supporting a larger shark, they mostly stuck to defending their leader from smaller drones threatening to swarm him. The plan was to have the reptilian titan destroy the defensive towers and then breach Mecron's fortress with his acid spit, though the rogue genius might have a trick up his sleeve. As it turned out, he hit two. The red genome noticed movement near Mecron's fortress, holes opening inside the two circles making up the base's infinity shape. Two enormous rockets the size of skyscrapers emerged from the ground, flying towards the heavens at incredible speed. The Kujata and the Behemoth had been launched. Leo immediately raced after them, unleashing a plasma beam at the Kujata. A force field around the rocket negated his attack, and though it briefly shorted out, the two orbital weapons continued their ascent. If they get too far. Leonard couldn't finish his sentence, blasting a path through the flying robots. They weren't even fighting to win, but to delay. If, the Cossack replied with laconic wit, flying after the Kujata at full speed. The G-force involved would have crushed any normal pilot, but the vigilante powered through, catching up to the satellite. He was a man who believed in actions over words. Leonard pursued the Behemoth, intending to crash into it and bypass its force field, when a roar echoed from behind him. The red genome turned around, as a monster emerged from the fortress. The creature looked like some kind of biomechanical European dragon. The 10 meters tall reptile had wings similar to solar sails, its red scales mixed with black machinery covering the chest, the head, and the claws. Its yellow, reptilian eyes glared at the red genome, betraying a hint of intellect. What the hell was that, a biomechanical war machine? Leonard didn't have time to fight it, or the Behemoth may escape Earth's orbit. As if to answer his thoughts, the dragon pointed at Leonard with both its hands, the claws shining with crimson energy. A crushing force took over the living sun and forced him down. Much to his surprise, Leonard ended up crashing towards the ground, an invisible hand dragging him away from the Behemoth. Though he was more skilled with plasma and fire, Leonard could manipulate his own gravity. While he mostly used it to fly, he had learned a few other tricks. Manipulating his gravity field, he managed to collapse the effect, bringing him down, returning to the fight. What was that? Leonard asked out loud, pursuing the dragon. A gravity well. Gravity control, Pythia said as the dragon roared back. It's a red. Leonard thought he had misheard for a moment. What? But only humans, until now. Mecran's power-covered multi-agent systems, from artificial intelligences to nanotech constructs. His Missouri was to create AI dedicated to the creation of new technologies, allowing him to make breakthroughs in specialties outside his own. Mecran was the most dangerous kind of genius. The one who could make more. But to think he had uncovered the secret of elixirs. The rogue genius couldn't be allowed to escape. No matter what. Gathering up plasma in his core, Leonard fired a deadly beam at the creature. Though it moved at supersonic speed, the monster couldn't outspeed light. But as it turned out, it didn't need to. Instead, it turned its own gravity crush ability on empty air, creating a miniature black hole the size of a fist. The phenomenon absorbed the dragon into itself before disappearing, the ion beam hitting nothing but air. Damn, did it use gravity to create a wormhole or something? Whatever the case, it had fulfilled its mission in delaying Leonard. The Cossack had somehow managed to bring down the Kujata, the satellite's wreckage crashing on Sarajevo's streets, but the Behemoth had become a faint light point in the skies. Shit. 73% chance that the Behemoth opens fire on Sarajevo once online, according to calculator, Pythia warned. Increasing by 1 point every 10 minutes. Had Mecran grown desperate enough to fire at his own base? It wasn't about winning anymore. Leonard turned towards the heavens, ready to pursue the satellite even into the dark reaches of space if needed when Pythia's voice interrupted him. No, don't. Hit the fortress and reach Mecran. Kill him before he pulls the switch. The odds are better. But the satellite will. Something worse is coming. Leonard froze. What do you mean? If his fortress isn't annihilated soon, Mecran will somehow kill everyone in Sarajevo, Pythia said, her composure breaking into genuine fear. Destroy the bunker at all costs. What's waiting for me inside? I don't know. Her words turned haunting. I only see black. It's all black. Leo braced himself for battle and flew at Mach speed through the fortress metal walls. Mecran was waiting, deep down. Where could Mecran be hiding? Smashing through blast doors and steel walls, Leonard Hargraves felt something wrong in the atmosphere. Space itself bending and twisting. Something created powerful magnetic fields inside the base, tearing apart the very fabric of reality. As he had thought, Mecran's fortress also counted as a particle accelerator. Did the genius activate it? For what purpose? How could it help repel the army at his door? Pythia, where do I go? Leonard asked, but he only heard psychic static. Whatever happened inside the fortress interfered with the telepathic contact. He was on his own. Leonard eventually made his way into the fortress collider, a closed circuit of steel inside which particles moved at an astonishing speed. A stream of unknown, blue energy raced through the superstructure, the red genome entering it like a fish swimming inside a river. He didn't identify the particles inside the collider. Perhaps they were undiscovered by modern science, or not native to Earth's reality. Much to his surprise, Leo started to see things inside the stream. Bluish phantoms of strange, inhuman figures composed of raw data, blinking in and out of existence. These mirages never settled in one shape, constantly changing. What was going on? The living sun could tell the ambient energy focused in one place at the facility's center. The point where the two loops making up the infinity symbol joined. He followed the blue stream towards its endpoint, eventually crashing through more steel walls. The blue stream leaked out behind him, dispersing into fine particles. Leo's crash course ended at the very core of the fortress, a command center straight out of H.R. Geiger's nightmares. The entire room looked like a Gothic cathedral of steel, whose walls were alive. Veins of metal coursed through them, pumping the building with thick black oil. The structure seemed capable of breathing, while coiled tin spines formed the pillars keeping the roof. Eye-like screens projected images of the battle outside, while loudspeakers screamed warnings. 6 giant, biomechanical brains the size of elephants formed a circle around a tiny blue spot floating in the midst of an energy pillar, the focal point of the entire superstructure. Each of the brains were protected from the outside world by reinforced glass tanks, and connected by thick wires. Leo guessed they were biomechanical supercomputers, housing the AIs piloting their master's entire war effort. Mekran was there, standing on a platform below the blue spot. The wizened old man wore nothing but simple white clothes and needed a black cane to walk. He was the only creature of flesh in this ghastly iron heart, giving orders to his AI servants in Bosnian. Transfer all data to the backup base. Mekran's voice sounded so calm, so small, so human. Activate all remaining units outside, and open the gate. Data transfer initiated. A robotic voice answered through loudspeakers. Warning, dimensional coordinates incomplete. High degree of instability expect. Don't care if we destroy Sarajevo. Open the gate. Mekran suddenly noticed Leonard, who had his palm raised at the man. Now that he could take a good look at the genius face, the living son realized that the battle had taken its toll on him too. Already past his 70s, Mekran seemed like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were blackened by fatigue, his hands shaking with stress. He looked so normal. He didn't wear a costume, nor was he a larger-than-life, charismatic Dark Lord. Mekran was a mere man, straight out of a retirement home. One who had killed millions, perhaps billions. And yet, he looked so very tired of it all. Broken by a decade of endless warfare. The living son's hand wavered. "Make your shot count," Mekran said, glaring bitterly at Leonard. "You won't get another." Instead of blasting him, Leonard Hargrave stared at the hateful dictator straight in the eyes. "Are you happy, Mekran?" he asked in Bosnian. The question took the genius aback. "Are you happy living like this?" Leonard asked. While he didn't unleash any plasma blast, he kept his hand raised. Pythia would flay him alive if she knew. Alone in a bunker, surrounded by machines, killing people left and right? Was that your wish? "Are you happy living like this?" The fortress shook, while the genius mulled the question over. He looked away, before focusing back on Leonard. "No," Mekran admitted, sounding exhausted. "No, I'm not." "Then why won't you stop? Why do you care?" The genius snapped back. Because I want to believe human life should be cherished. Even yours. I will kill you if I must, but call me naive. If there is the slightest chance of ending this by the book, I want to try it. Leonard paused, trying to find his words. "I don't know what made you what you are, but you must realize deep down that hurting other people won't help." He did. Leonard could see it painted all over his face. "Please surrender peacefully," the living son asked. "Tell your machines to stand down, and we will give you a fair hearing. Nobody else has to die. Not even you. You started this, and you can end it." Mekran's expression suddenly morphed from sadness to wrath. "I didn't start anything," the man snarled, his voice dripping with venom. Anger bottled up for years roared to the surface. "You did. The Serbians murdered my sons at Srebrenica and you people just watched. If you want this war to end, then stop getting in my way." Leonard got his answer in the man's intense, hateful gaze. He would never stop. It didn't matter how many had to die to fuel the fire burning within him. It was an inferno that could never be extinguished. This bitter, hateful man would never stop until he had brought the whole world to its knees. A demon born of war. Leonard regretfully opened fire. A crimson force field activated around the rogue genius, deflecting a stream of plasma. Metal and electrical devices around Mekran melted, but the warlord remained completely unharmed. Similar fields protected the giant brains, protecting them from danger. Leonard flew towards the genius, intending to smash through the force field and end Mekran's life. A roar echoed at his left, a wormhole opening. The biomechanical dragon from last time emerged from it, claws raised at the living son. A powerful gravitational force pushed Leonard against a steel wall, sending him crashing against mechanical panels. The dragon kept the gravitational force active, attempting to break the red genome's hardcore apart. It could have been beautiful. A new Eden. Mekran's face twitched in anger. "I could have eradicated diseases, solved world hunger, brought peace. Increased life expectancy, everything automated. Everything would have been perfect. The rogue genius raised his cane at Leonard, gritting his teeth in impotent rage. If it hadn't been for you. He hit the ground with his cane, his hands shaking. If it hadn't been for people like you, I could have saved the world. Look through your window, Mecron. Leo replied angrily, trying to break free of the battle beast's gravitational field. You didn't save the world, you killed it. You're living among the dead. The genius visibly flinched, his fingers clenching around his cane. By now, he was so furious he couldn't make coherent sentences. If politicians had any imagination, I wouldn't have fed all the killing data. Had to make them stop. They never listened. Couldn't understand. Leonard ignored that maniac and blasted the biomechanical dragon with plasma. The creature's scales and flesh melted away, leaving only mechanical implants and seared bones. Yet astonishingly, it kept moving and didn't release the pressure. Meanwhile, the blue sphere started expanding inside the energy pillar, turning into some kind of energy lens. A spatial anomaly leading into a place of bright blue light. When Leonard looked at this reality tear, he felt something brush against his mind. He thought it was Pythia for a second, before realizing the telepathic signal came from the spatial anomaly. Images formed inside the living son's mind, like in the blue stream. Vivid pictures of his childhood in Hackney, surrounded by criminality. Of his first day in the London Fire Department, helping a family evacuate from a burning building. Of finding the strange box in the mail, and the crimson potion within. Of the day he and Alice founded the carnival. What is this? Leonard asked, mesmerized by the portal and the images it sent him. Even the burned dragon stopped attacking, entranced by whatever power came from beyond this blue wormhole. The Akashic Records. Mecron muttered, his eyes widening in triumph. The Universal Compendium. All data, all information, all knowledge, all intent, and emotions, it all comes from this place. The source of blue powers, of all geniuses' knowledge. A blue world of pure intellect. Mecron raised his cane at the portal, his fury replaced with excitement. It's all here. All the world's secrets, everything that can fix it. It's all here. He turned his back on the red genome, chuckling to himself. Even you must see its beauty. The mental stream of image continued, but instead of showing pictures of Leo's own life, they shifted to stranger sights. Of alien worlds covered in massive oceans, ruled by fish-like creatures. Of supernovas illuminating the darkness of space. With it, I can begin again. Mecron boasted. Fix everything. Once I get there, I will know everything. Leonard looked at the blue with divine fascination, until he spotted a tiny taint of blackness. The telepathic signal instantly ended, the pictures turning black. The screens in the facility turned red, and the loudspeakers changed their tune. Warning, anomaly detected. Warning, anomaly detected. Warning, unknown dimension converging. The blue hole seemed consumed from within by darkness. Black spots slowly grew from within the blue portal, tainting it entirely. The room seemed to freeze over, the temperature dropping at an alarming rate. Even Mecron had no idea what was happening. It's not the blue world. It's somewhere else. Within seconds, the blue star had turned into a black hole, a sphere of darkness from which no light could escape. It wasn't a door to a dimension of pure information, but one of void and nothingness. It's all black, Mecron muttered, gazing into the abyss. And then, the abyss gazed back. A pulse of darkness erupted from the portal, vaporizing the dragon, the artificial brains, and most of the room. Mecron barely had the time to scream as his force field vanished, and the void devoured him. Leonard felt the dragon's gravitational field disappear, only to have his own overwhelmed by darkness too. An alien force threatened to consume him, the way a black hole ate a star. Something was looking at them from the other side. The dark gaze was peeling Mecron layer by layer, like an onion. Skin, flesh, bones, and then working its ways down. Within the seconds, the genius had been erased from existence, his atoms torn asunder and annihilated. Without his heart core keeping his body whole through a powerful gravitational field, Leonard would have suffered the same fate. Even now he felt the outer layers of his solar body disintegrating, its molecules annihilated into nothingness. The sustained gaze of this thing would tear him apart in minutes, destroying his heart core as it did with Mekran. His human mind simply couldn't comprehend what he was looking at. A shape vaguely reminding Leo of an eye, surrounded by a cloud of dark, empty space. A sentient hole in reality, a living darkness that devoured light instead of being banished by it. A colossal entity, so powerful, so almighty, that it destroyed their reality simply by looking at it. And it was trying to get in. The black portal slowly widened, the radius of the baleful gaze increasing. The entity behind the gate kept looking, unaware, or perhaps uncaring, of the damage it caused. If the particle accelerator continued expanding the portal, Mekran will somehow kill everyone in Sarajevo. As Pythia's words came to mind, Leonard immediately unleashed a stream of plasma at the portal. Flames as searing as a nuclear detonation. They quickly stopped to exist. They weren't absorbed by the hole or extinguished. They disappeared, leaving neither heat nor smoke behind. The dark force on the other side of the portal hadn't even noticed Leonard's counterattack. Its mere presence erased his flames. Compared to this entity, the living sun looked like an ant trying to attack an elephant. If he couldn't destroy the portal directly, what could Leonard do? If he did nothing, this thing would erase him from existing within minutes, and then do the same with the fortress. The particle accelerator's destruction would probably cause the portal to implode, but Sarajevo would be wiped out. The particle accelerator's destruction. If Leonard could sufficiently damage the fortress, he could collapse the portal before it could grow larger. But the explosion needed. It might cost him his life. Leonard thought about the hundreds of people outside. Heroes fighting to make a difference in this bleak, devastated world. Friends like Pythia, with families at home. Soldiers trying to rebuild a kind, democratic civilization. Good people. Leonard didn't hesitate. He gathered all his remaining energy, calling upon whatever power fueled his heart core, and caused his heart core to implode on itself. His body turned white, his radiance incinerating the room. The black hole absorbed most of the heat, but not all of it. As they say. He muttered, staring defiantly at the darkness beyond. Better to go out with a bang, rather than a whimper. His last thought towards his comrades outside, the living sun went supernova. Leonard's light consumed the world in a cataclysmic explosion, and the darkness returned from whence it came. Darkness. It was all darkness. A pitch-black nothingness. He couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't smell, couldn't taste. He could barely think. He felt cold. He felt numb. And more than anything, he felt alone. Was this death? Had the darkness beyond that portal been the afterlife? Or maybe it was all a hallucination, his brain's last hurrah before the final end. He had never truly believed in any god or afterlife. He thought he would just vanish, cease to exist. Compared to an eternity in the dark, it would have been a mercy. He had always lived through others, as far as he could remember. He might have looked like the sun, but he never felt warm when alone. So he had filled the void with his fellow human beings, their happiness becoming his own. Loneliness had always scared him more than death. Now, he was alone with his thoughts. Alone with his regrets. He would never have a wife, never have children. He hadn't written that urban fantasy book he always said he would. He would never return to London and see the people he left behind. He would never get to make up with certain friends, whom he had partied with on bad terms. He would never avenge the Costas or bring Augustus to justice. He would never know if his sacrifice had made a difference. So many things left unfinished. But he was okay with it. He had tried. He had done his best. He saw light in the darkness. He felt like driving a car to the end of a long tunnel, though he couldn't see what was beyond the exit. Was it heaven? Was it the last door? Were the Christians right, or the Muslims? The Hindus or the Buddhists? All of them, or none at all? He didn't know, but whatever awaited him beyond, he could live with it. He entered the light. Leonard opened his eyes. Instead of facing angels, he could only see a white ceiling. He had returned to his frail human form, though with some changes. His black skin was somehow hairless now, and all his muscles felt sore. His dark eyes struggled to adapt to the light, though he noticed two people looking over him. "Easy, Leo." The roguish teleporter smiled down on her friend. "You come back from hell itself." "Good to see you awake, sir," Stitch said. This strange genome always wore a plague doctor outfit, to the point Leonard had never seen how he looked underneath. "You had us worried." "Where?" The living son's eyes acclimated enough to allow him to see. He seemed to be in some kind of hospital, laying on a bed and hooked to machinery. Clearly, death hadn't claimed him yet. "Visoko," Stitch answered. "A few dozen kilometers from Sarajevo. We evacuated here after the battle. We won." Ace beamed with happiness. "We won, Leo? We fucking won. How long was I?" Leonard struggled to form words. His throat felt dry and sore. "How long was I out?" 3 days, Stitch answered. "And Mekran's fortress?" "It's all gone, a crater of molten steel and glass." Ace smiled at him, happy to see her friend alive. "You blew up that place good." "Truth be told, we believed that you had perished in the explosion," Stitch said dryly. "Me too," Leo replied with the same tone. Ace elbowed the plague doctor for his insensitivity, before looking back at Leo. "We found your core in the wreckage, reduced to a white sphere the size of a hand. It took days for your power to recreate your body, even with Sidekick's help. Sarajevo has been taken, though the city lies in ruins," Stitch explained. "Shining Knight and her group are busy destroying the last surviving robots, but the production factories have been dismantled. The genome wars have ended." It was the end. The words took a weight off Leonard's shoulder. He had originally co-founded the Carnival with Pythia to fight dangerous genomes and help mankind recover from the wars. Mekran had been the greatest threat to all of humanity, and now he was gone. It had taken almost 10 years, but maybe mankind would finally rise back from the old world's ashes. And through some miracle, Leo had lived through it all. Maybe he should reconsider some of his beliefs. After having seen that creature beyond the portal and his near-death experience, he wondered if religions were onto something. Stitch cleared his throat. However, Leo repeated. "The behemoth is now in orbit deep in space, far beyond our reach," the plague doctor said. "The Cossack tried to bring it down, even breaking half his bones from the G-force, but he wasn't fast enough." "Who cares?" Ace asked, far more optimistic. "There's no one left to activate it." "Some of Mekran's bases remain," Stitch replied with pessimism. "And while our foe and his allies are all dead, there's no guarantee nobody else could find a way to hack into the satellite. I believe we will live to regret that failure." "The evil that men do lives after them," Leonard quoted, looking back at the white, lifeless ceiling. Was the behemoth looking down on them, far above their heads? "The good is often interred with their bones." Was that from Shakespeare, sir? "I don't know," Leo admitted. "I only ever memorized the famous quotes. I thought it would make me sound smarter." "It doesn't," Ace chuckled, though her smile didn't reach her eyes. Something weighed on her mind. "By the way, he's dead, right? As in, no last-minute escape, or a clone hidden somewhere? Mekran is really dead?" The memory of the genius disintegration flashed in Leonard's mind, much to his unease. "Yes," he said grimly, though his allies let out a relieved sigh. "He is dead for good, and I don't think he will come back from that." The memory still sent shivers down Leonard's spine. There had been no malice or benevolence in this entity's actions. Only curiosity. That godlike being had simply noticed the breach and looked through, the same way a child did through a keyhole. Leo could have just easily switched places with Mekran, had he been less lucky. No, he shouldn't think like that. He had been given a new chance at life, and he would spend it looking forward, rather than back. Though, if creatures so powerful were out there, waiting. "How many casualties?" Leonard asked, trying to fend off the existential dread with down-to-earth news. "1 out of 4, Stitch replied. "It was a good day." "Jesse died," Ace replied with a frown, much less optimistic. Her brother is heartbroken. I think he'll retire. The news saddened Leonard Hargraves. Due to regularly picking fights with the most dangerous genomes, the carnival experienced a lot of turnovers, losing people in almost every engagement. Leonard had buried far too many good people. Mr. Wave. Pythia? Mr. Wave is. Well, you know him. He's boasting about his killer robot kill count to everyone who will listen. Ace's expression harshened. Pythia though. She glanced at another hospital bed, Leo following her gaze. His eyes widened in horror at what he found. Alice was in a bed near his own, heavily sedated and linked to intravenous medical devices. Her skin had turned pale as death, and her gaze was empty. Lifeless. Alice. Leonard attempted to rise from his bed but lacked the strength to lift himself up. Ace put a hand on his chest with a frown, to force him back to his bed. Shit. Hey, calm down, Ace said with a frown. You're still sick, and you can't do anything for her. She's been like this since the battle's end, sir, Stitch explained with clinical coldness. Her symptoms fit those of extreme brain damage. She overtaxed her power, Leo realized with sadness. He had warned her, but she had been willing to risk it all. Maybe she had always known it would end this way. The plague doctor nodded. Nighthawk could cure her if given time. He said that considering her pivotal role in today's victory, it was only natural he helped her recover. Leonard shivered. Considering the man's methods, we need to warn her husband and son. It's their choice, not ours. I already called them. Ace shook her head. Poor Matthias. Miss Martell left something for you, sir, Stitch handed Leonard a USB key. I apologize for the indiscretion, but we already took a look. What does it contain? Leonard asked with a frown. Per a cognitive analysis of the next few years, Stitch explained, Calculator and her compiled a database of the greatest threats to human civilization before the battle. I believe Pythia anticipated her fate and wished to help us beyond that point. I suppose Augustus is on the list? Leonard asked, his tone turning venomous. He had been given a second chance to see justice done, and he wouldn't waste it. Yes, Ace nodded, her expression turning grim. But someone else has taken the top spot. This surprised Leonard. Who could be more dangerous than an invincible, megalomaniacal warlord? Who? Some psycho called Bloodstream, Stitch explained. According to the data, there is a high chance that he will cause an extinction event in 2017 if not slain beforehand. Something about his daughter dying, I think, Ace added with a frown. You will have to wait for Augustus, Leo. That psycho comes with a time limit. Leonard looked at the USB key, wondering what grim prophecies it held. Bloodstream. Genome parties were always fun, but the aftermath sucked. When he returned home to Jamie's place, Ryan found it in ruins. The floor had been buried underneath beer bottles, pizza boxes, trash, and stuff best left forgotten. Someone had drenched the sofa in a suspicious fluid, and while DJ Brain had survived the apocalypse, a partygoer drew a smiley face on the vat's surface. Even with repeated time stop, it was a struggle to clean up the mess. Ryan was still working on it by the evening. Faster, slave. Ryan's cruel taskmaster, Lanka, sat on a chair while he cleaned up the sofa with a mop. Ki-young's rats looked at the both of them, like viewers watching a comedy movie. I want to see this sofa shine enough to sit my ass upon. Do you want me to clean your royal butt too while I'm at it, your majesty? Ryan deadpanned. No, thank you, I already did my part, she replied. You're the one who skipped town all morning. You're just mad I was invited to the big guy's table, he mocked her back, before hearing his cell phone bleep in his pocket. He took a break from his dirty work to check a message from Jasmine. Jaslov, how do you want your armor? Ryan started typing his answer. Plush-eye Tamer, have you played Fallout? Jaslov, Fallout 1, Fallout 2, Tactics, or Van Buren? Plush-eye Tamer, you didn't mention Brotherhood of Steel. Jaslov, that game never existed, and I'll kill anyone who says otherwise. Plush-eye Tamer, good answer. Fallout 2, America for the Enclave. Jaslov, figured. You're going to look great killing Moody's plushie tamer, you and I, and my big plasma cannon. Jaslov, keep it loaded. Might give it a good polish if you behave. You're texting your girlfriend during work, blabbermouth. Lanka said while looking over his shoulder, grinning upon seeing the sender. Wait, it's Vulcan's number. Jealous? Ryan asked before putting the cell phone in his pocket. I'm glad you didn't commit suicide by going after Livia, but Vulcan. Mad respect. She's totally going to shoot you one day, but your bravery shall be remembered. Technically, she already did shoot him. Well, I had to work for both of us, since you couldn't get a date. Lanka grinned, sipping a beer. Where do you think these fluids came from? Ryan looked at the sofa, then at the mop, and finally at Lanka, whose grin grew wider. You know what, I paid my debt to society, he said, tossing the mop at his flatmate's face. Clean your mess yourself. Hey, you lazy ass, get back here. She complained, trying to get the sticky mop off her face. Ryan ignored her, moving towards the stereo to unplug his brain in a jar. Ki-young's rats left for the kitchen and trailed a towel back to the sofa with their mouths, intending to clean it up themselves. Their mistress was still holed up in her room with her boyfriend, but she might emerge from their lair sometime soon. Jamie hadn't believed he had been promoted at first until Livia herself called him to confirm it. After a moment of silence, the swordsman had retired to his room with Ki-young to discuss it, but they had been alone for 3 hours by now. Ryan was pretty sure there wasn't a lot of talking involved in this private celebration. When Jamie and Ki-young returned to the living room, the rats had cleaned the sofa enough for Lanka to slouch on it. The couple was so close they were almost touching, and Chitter had recovered from yesterday's breakdown. In fact, she looked so happy that Ryan thought she might ascend to heaven on the spot. Something big happened, the courier said, as he separated the loudspeakers from the brain in the jar. I can tell. What's up? Lanka asked with an eyebrow raised. Besides changing your names to Mr. and Miss Mercury? Ki-young exchanged a glance with her man, who nodded slowly. Jamie finally proposed, she told Lanka, giddy with joy. Her friend blinked. No way. Congratulations. Ryan said with a thumb up, while the rats clapped with their tiny hands. You should tell everyone. And you accepted? Lanka asked Ki-young a stupid question. Of course I said yes. She chuckled. I want you to be the bridesmaid, Lanka. Me? For the first time since Ryan met her, the ex-marauder looked speechless and flustered. But I don't know shit about weddings. You will do well, Ki-young replied with a warm smile, though it wavered a little. Felix would have been Jamie's best man, but I don't think he will come. I will ask Mercury to be the best man, Jamie declared. I owe my whole life to him. If he hadn't raised me up, I would still be some poor orphan selling scraps. Now, I will do my best to honor his name. Yeah, I'm gonna have to call you boss now, Lanka said with a wide grin. If anyone deserves the job, it's you, Jamie. I still can't believe it's happening, Zambada replied, torn between joy, pride, and anxiety. He looked so adorable when unsure of himself. Me, a street rat, ascending to the rank of an Olympian. Becoming a Kipper regime. It's imposter syndrome, Ryan told the swordsman. It's like sanity, fake it until you make it. Yeah, I suppose, Jamie replied, though he clearly had a long way to go. Still, it's so big. Beyond all the responsibilities and sitting at the Olympians' table, I will have all the division's resources to call upon. Millions, billions in cash. You still plan to invest in soccer games? Lanka asked. We haven't had a national cup since the Genome Wars, Jamie replied, his voice brimming with passion. Dynamis keeps a tight grip on sports with their Dynacup, but the slums have so many talented people. Nobody will give them a chance but us. I'm sure one of them can be the new Maradona. You should give to charity, develop detox centers, hospitals. Ki-young looked at Ryan. Even rebuild that orphanage the Metagang trashed. You should start with all of Rust Town. Ryan shrugged. That place is the most miserable I've seen, and that includes radioactive wastelands. Much to his surprise, Jamie actually seemed to take his suggestion to heart. "That's not a bad idea," he admitted, looking at Ki-young. "What do you think?" "You should know," she replied, before glancing at Ryan. "You have seen the Olympians. Do you think they would mind?" Ryan gave the question some thought. At the end of the day, Lightning Butt didn't seem to care about money. He only craved power and respect. As long as Jamie followed orders and didn't interfere with the other divisions, Augustus probably wouldn't give a damn if he used funds to create orphanages or charities. Neptune and Livia seemed more interested in developing the family's empire, and they would probably approve the initiative if only to develop goodwill. As for Mars and Venus, he didn't get much of a read on them. Bacchus, however, "I think they would be open to the idea," Ryan admitted, with a caveat. "As long as it doesn't interfere with the Bliss business." That was the real problem. The couple's mood instantly worsened, and they exchanged a silent glance. Ki-young didn't give up though. "If you could talk to Olivia about it." "Moi," Ryan replied, a little surprised. "She seems to hold you in high esteem, from what I've heard," Jamie said. "News travel fast. But be careful around her. She's the apple of her father's eye, and he doesn't take disrespect lightly." "Don't worry, Vulcan got to him first," Lanka said, laughing when Ryan glared at her. "You ratted me out." He glanced at the mice in the room. "Sorry. Some of my best friends are tiny rodents. I had a feeling something would happen between you two." Ki-young smiled warmly. The tension was palpable. "I'm so glad you found someone," Jamie declared, warmly putting a hand on Ryan's shoulder. "I don't know if it will last, but I hope she can make you happy." "Well, I will retire before you give me diabetes," the courier replied, carrying his brain in a jar to the garage. When he left the main room, the trio were discussing the wedding's date and logistics. Thankfully, the garage had been locked up during the party, and Ryan's car was spared from the guests' attention. If Lanka had used his backseat for her vile, sticky deed, the time traveler might have gone on a suicide run out of rage. 30 minutes later, the courier had plugged back the brain in its place. He opened the door and sat at the driver's seat, putting on the chrono radio. Instead of funny alternate universe songs, a faint voice came out of it. "Hi, Rere." Ryan remained still, checked if the garage door was closed, and finally increased the sound. "Len? Is that you?" "Why yes, it's me. I don't bother you?" No, it's fine, I just had to confirm it." He had to ask since it was unlike her to make the first move. "We haven't spoken for days." "Yes, She stopped, not sure what to say. The awkwardness was almost palpable. Ryan decided to spare her further embarrassment. "How are the kids?" "They are still getting used to the place, but they love it. We played games. Board games." She marked a short pause, trying to find her words. "Sarah said you would love them. Are you inviting me?" Maybe. Well, that was a big leap forward. Maybe their friendship wasn't wrecked beyond repair, or the kid's presence helped Len recover from her self-imposed isolation. "Vulcan contacted me about the Meta Gang," Len changed the subject. "I think you should know. I followed their submarine to a hidden tunnel, leading below the city. Towards the bunker." Ryan put his hands on the wheel. "Have you told Vulcan?" "No, I thought I should tell you first." "Riri, is this true what I heard on the news? You attacked Dynamis with Vulcan?" "To borrow one of their suits," Ryan replied, putting his hands on the warm, soft cashmere sleeves. "It was a date, sort of." Len didn't answer. The line turned into static, with Ryan wondering if she was shocked, sad, or just lost the connection. "Shorty? I'm happy for you. She's better than the others." Another pause. "You deserve to find happiness." Something in her voice broke Ryan's heart. "Shorty? Does she know?" "No, I didn't tell her." He glanced out of the window, and at the garage's cold walls. It always ends the same way. While he genuinely enjoyed Jasmine's company, Ryan wouldn't hesitate to stand against the Augusti to achieve his perfect run. Though she didn't seem loyal to Augustus, Vulcan also had a fiery temper, enough to try murdering the courier in the previous loop. In spite of his best intentions, they might end up on opposite sides. And almost all his relationships ended up undone at the end of a loop. Getting too attached would only make the inevitable end more heartbreaking. I see, Len said, clearing her throat. But maybe not this time. Ryan's head perked up in interest. You found a solution? I think so, she said, before asking him questions. You create your time stop by aligning your two selves, right? So for the 10 seconds duration, both time periods interact. I see where this is going, the courier said, his mood deflating. I've thought of using that period to send stuff in the past, but you can't send anything physical. Even cats. I've checked. Physical time travel seemed to break some of the underlying laws of their universe, even by genome standards. Or if it could be done, you needed a unique, undiscovered violet power that Ryan couldn't replicate. But you can send signals. Information, like the chronoradio does. What are you getting at, Shorty? Sishak, he can overwrite minds, even transfer his own, without physically changing the brain. He alters the brain waves and neural signals. Ergo, the physical storing space matters less than all the electrical reactions taking place every second. If we make a snapshot, and send that information back to a perfectly compatible vessel, like their own nervous system. Ryan pondered her words. You want to send someone's consciousness back in time. The way you do, yes. It's a good idea, but besides the fact brains aren't exactly your area of expertise, how do you plan to copy a whole human mind, guide it through a temporal anomaly, and then have it transferred to their past self? A human brain had more than 1 million billion connections, collectively sending a quadrillion signals per second. Yes, it's... She let out a sigh. I can only do one small part of the design, the navigation to guide the signal through the anomaly. You will need resources I don't have to complete it. Other geniuses, more processing power. More time to figure it out. Of that, Ryan had aplenty. But you think it can be done? I can upgrade your chronoradio to send signals back to a target, she said. I already wrote the design down. I can send the plans to you. It's not that different from communicating through water or in hostile environments. It's harder. But it can be done. Do you think it can be completed in this loop? Ryan asked. Before everyone forgets? Len's silence was an answer all of its own. There. She cleared her throat. There's one place that may have the tech. Mekran's bunker. The meta-gang will be there. With their current resources and intel, Ryan doubted he could defeat all the psychos in the base. He still hadn't figured out a way to get rid of Frank in particular, and any fat Lecter would certainly use hostages like last time. I can help, Len argued. You helped me defend the orphanage, so the least I can do is return the favor. If you die in front of me again, I can take care of myself, she replied with a noise, before noticing something. Again? Ryan didn't respond. His thoughts turned to his dynamis loop, and how acid rain had blown them up to Kingdom Come. Maybe you can ask the Augusti? Len proposed, running out of solutions. Ryan hesitated, considering the odds, before reaching a decision. No, he said. No, absolutely not. And after seeing Lightning Bud in the flesh, Ryan couldn't give him access to Mekran's armory. The organization had good members, but the man at the top was a colossal dick. If he found Mekran's technology, Augustus would probably use it to sow death. He barely resisted the urge to kill with his current resources, and Mekran's weapons would only make him nastier. I don't like them, but once you have the design, I will have to restart afterward to avoid a disaster, Ryan replied, and you will forget me again. Don't think about me, Rere. Another pause. I don't want to be a burden. Not again, was left unsaid. Ryan sighed. Just give me time to figure it out, he pleaded. Maybe Vulcan's armor would boost his power, or a better option might present itself. Don't say anything about the meta or the bunker yet. All right. I'm here if you need anything. "Thanks, Shorty." Len didn't answer. Instead, the chrono radio put on some melodramatic cyberpunk tunes. Len didn't fully understand the responsibility on Ryan's shoulder. He could spare everyone, find the perfect scenario with the best results. If he saved while on a suboptimal route, even to preserve their friendship, then all the consequences would be on him. Lives taken would be forever lost. The time traveler would have no excuse since he could have preserved them, had he tried hard enough. And after giving the present situation some thought, Ryan had to admit the truth to himself. This loop was good. Very good. But it wouldn't be perfect.